It was the kind of curiosity that could ruin you. I had always been drawn to the unknown, the unexplained urban legends, mysterious rituals, and forbidden games whispered about in the dark corners of the internet. But nothing had ever scared me as much as the Daruma-san game. The ritual seemed simple enough. A spine-chilling Japanese ghost summoning game involving a bathtub, a chant, and a test of survival. The internet was littered with rules and warnings, each one more ominous than the last. Never open your eyes during the ritual. One post cautioned, once you summon her, she will follow you until the game ends. If you lose, the consequences are fatal. I wasn't one to scare easily. And that night, as the rain tapped insistently against my apartment windows, I decided to try it. Alone. I filled the bathtub with water and turned off all the lights in my small apartment, the faint glow from the streetlights outside barely illuminating the edges of my living room. The air felt heavier than usual, as though the darkness itself had weight. I took off my clothes, leaving them in a neat pile on the sink, and stepped into the warm water. The sound of water sloshing against the porcelain echoed louder than it should have in the silence. Sitting down, I took a deep breath and closed my eyes. I began to wash my hair, following the instructions carefully. With every stroke of my hands, I repeated the chant. Daruma-san fell down. Daruma-san fell down. Daruma-san fell down. Each repetition made the room feel colder, the air biting against my wet skin. Halfway through the chant, a sudden, overwhelming sense of dread washed over me. It felt as though someone was standing behind me, watching. I wanted to open my eyes, but I didn't dare. The rules were clear. Do not look. I finished the chant and waited, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it might break through my chest. I heard nothing at first, only the sound of water dripping from my fingers into the tub. But then, ever so faintly, there was a splash. The kind of splash you'd hear if someone's foot entered the water. I froze. My breath hitched, and the hair on the back of my neck stood on end. She was here. I could feel her presence, cold and oppressive, filling the small bathroom like a storm cloud. I wanted to run, but the rules demanded patience. Stand up slowly, I whispered to myself. Carefully, I rose from the water, keeping my eyes shut tight. I reached for the towel I had left on the sink, my hand trembling as I wrapped it around myself. Don't slip, I muttered, stepping out of the tub. The sensation of being watched followed me as I moved, every step deliberate. I left the bathroom, shutting the door behind me, and exhaled shakily. The ritual wasn't over. Now came the hard part, surviving until dawn. From the moment I exited the bathroom, the rules of the game were clear. I couldn't let her catch. Daruma-san would follow, always just out of sight, moving closer whenever I wasn't paying it. To evade her, I had to periodically glance over my shoulder and mutter, "Kita!" The word would buy me a few seconds, forcing her to retreat temporarily. But it wasn't a guarantee of safety. I spent the first hour pacing my apartment, every creak of the floorboards making my heart leap. The feeling of being watched never left. At one point, I glanced over my shoulder and caught a glimpse of a shadowy figure in the corner of the room. My breath hitched. She was there, barely visible, her presence a dark void in the dim. "Kita!" I hissed, spinning around. When I looked again, she was gone. The hours dragged on. I couldn't sit, couldn't relax. Every time I thought I was alone, the oppressive sensation of her presence would return. At 3 a.m., I made the mistake of looking into the mirror. My reflection was fine, but behind me, her face emerged from the shadow. Long, wet hair clung to her pale skin, and her eyes were dark, bottomless pits that seemed to pull me in. She grinned, her teeth jagged and unnatural. I turned sharply, muttering, "Kita!" as loudly as I dared. When I turned back to the mirror, she was gone. But the image of her face was burned into my mind, a haunting memory I couldn't shake. By 4 a.m., I was mentally and physically exhausted. My apartment felt smaller, the walls closing in around. The sound of water dripping echoed incessantly, even though I had turned off the faucet hours ago. I avoided the bathroom entirely, convinced she was lurking inside, waiting for me to slip. At 5 a.m., the atmosphere shifted. The heavy dread that had filled the air seemed to intensify. I could hear faint whispers, unintelligible murmurs that sent chills down my spine. I'd never been so terrified in my life. My instincts screamed at me to run, to leave the apartment, and never look back. But I knew the rules. There was no escaping her until dawn. The last hour was a blur. Every second felt like an eternity, my senses on high alert. I counted down the minutes, clutching a kitchen knife for some semblance of protection, though I knew it was useless. When the first rays of sunlight broke through the window, the oppressive presence vanished. The air felt lighter, and the whispers ceased. I collapsed onto the couch, my body trembling with relief. I had survived. Or so I thought. Over the next few days, I noticed small, inexplicable things. My reflection in the mirror seemed off, like it was watching me rather than reflect. Shadows in my apartment lingered longer than they should have, and I could still hear faint whispers when I was. A week later, I woke up to find a message scrawled on the bathroom mirror in water droplets. Let's play again. My heart sank. The game wasn't over. It had never been over. And now, I was her favorite player.